Agents, you're not going to like this. The fact is, most of you are replaceable. Most of us are replaceable. If you think that being number one in customer service, or you've been in business the longest, or your number of sales you have is what makes you irreplaceable, that's not it. It's meaningful connection, and most agents are doing it wrong. Isn't that right, Michaela?
Absolutely. And today on the Agent Shift, we're breaking it down for you how to become unforgettable to your clients. Two very simple but powerful conversation tools, TMAY and Ford. We're going to kind of jump right into this because it's important to know.
For those of you who've heard of Team Air Ford, you can jump off the podcast. You don't need to hear anymore, but we're going to do a deep dive. Some of you are going, what is TMAY? Look, I'll tell you, I didn't come up with this. I learned this from one of the greatest connectors I've ever met. His name's Gene Frederick. I know you've heard him do it too, Michaela. We're going to talk about that first because I think team is important, especially when you're meeting somebody for the first time. Real estate's a lot like blind dating almost, isn't it, Michaela?
Absolutely. And honestly, if you want to win in real estate, you've got to win in the relationships first. It really starts with asking the right questions.
Why are human beings so bad, especially real estate agents, at building a connection? I've got my theory. I'll tell you mine, then I want to hear what you think, Michaela. But I think it's because we like talking about ourselves, right? We want to tell everybody all the facts. Here's how long I've been in business. Here's the sales I've done. I'm number one in customer service. I hate to tell you, you're not number one in customer service. How can every agent be number one in customer service? That's what I don't get. With agents, a lot of times, our industry kind of attracts egomaniacs. I think sometimes like we have this huge ego. I'm not irreplaceable. No one would ever replace me. And the truth of the matter is, if you retired today, your best friend and your family would have another agent picked out by tomorrow. I mean, it's the truth of it, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, you threw out the statistic in another one of our videos, but something about 80% of the houses in the next 5 years are going to be sold by people who are not already in real estate. That means somebody's coming for your job.
So
Somebody's
here's
not going to make it into the business.
Yeah, and the great news is, look, if you're a newer agent and you're getting into the business like we know is going to happen over the next 5 years, all these people getting their license, you can beat the grizzled old vets who've been doing this for a long time. And it's simple as this, by making a connection. So, Michaela, how does somebody build a connection with you? Let's do the first one.
So, like you said, people are just focusing on the wrong things. Connection over scripts. I know people will push you scripts all day long, and they're great for a little bit of a guide, but the connection is key. So, we're going to focus on TMAY first. Tell me about yourself. And we'll talk about why it's not small talk, it really is building a connection.
It's so hard to ask that question sometimes because it feels, I don't know, it feels weird. You just have to get over it and just rip the Band-Aid off and tell me about yourself. But here's the key. It's the listening on the side of it, asking the question and actively listening. Here's what I think, what I've been taught that you should listen for. What's the first thing that comes out of their mouth? What's the first thing that comes out of your mouth? So if I ask you, Michaela, so we're just meeting, tell me about yourself. What would you say?
I would probably be like, well, I'm getting ready to have a baby soon.
Immediately, alarm bells go off in my head. Family is very important to Michaela. And I want to make sure that my presentation and my tact and the approach I take focuses around family. What if you asked me that, Michaela, and I said, I'm vice president of a company. I've been there 20 years. I got my degree in this, and I'm looking forward to retirement. What would be important to me then?
All right, you're work oriented, you're focusing on your career, but you're looking forward to an end. And so that means we're nearing a transition. And real estate, a lot of moves happen when people are making life transitions. So whether that's into retirement, having a baby, those are some of the key areas people buy houses when they're making those big life changes.
And that question right there will get you so far ahead, especially when you're first dealing with a lead, right? People want to say, oh, internet leads or leads that they have no loyalty. Well, that's because you didn't build a connection with them. And tell me about yourself. Don't be surprised if there's like this long pause, like uncomfortable silence, as people were like, oh my gosh, I didn't know I was going to have to talk. Tell me about yourself. They're thinking, they're running all different kinds of things through their head. What should I say? Am I saying the wrong thing now? It puts them on a little bit of the defensive. So don't worry about it. Give it some time. And I've even had people ask this. Well, what do you mean? Tell me about myself. And I'll tell them, look, if I'm going to be the best agent for you that I can, I need to know some things about you, right? Because not all houses, not all neighborhoods, not all everything's the same. So tell me what's important. What should I know about you? And you give them a chance to go again on that. People don't talk about themselves very often. So you'll find them pausing.
It is interesting. Once you get them going, if you're asking the right follow-up questions, they might not stop. So be prepared for that. Once people kind of get comfortable, they fall into this rhythm and you can watch it happen in front of your eyes. Once they get past that initial shock, like, oh, I'm talking about myself first, then what they kind of let down that guard and then they just keep telling you. And that is where you really, really listen. That is where you're going to find those key points and those areas where you're like, all right, I need to dig into that a little bit more.
I think everybody knows the 4 personality types, right? The DISC and things like that. We'll probably do a video on that in the future, but they're going to identify for you their main character trait and maybe even their trailing trait based on what comes out of their mouth first. So listen very carefully when you ask somebody, tell me about yourself. And the reason we use TMAY is just you're nervous when you're meeting someone. It's good to keep it in your mind. And I love that. Anything else we want to add to the TMAY part? That's it. Just guys, get out and just ask people, hey, tell me about yourself.
It's as easy as that, and we don't need to overcomplicate it. I think if you are looking for a little bit more and need some more structure, we've got you covered because now we're going to transition over into Ford. Really, it's the framework for trust. That's not what it stands
Sometimes,
for. That's what it
yeah,
is.
you're right. Sometimes the conversation lags a little bit, so it's good to have some follow-up questions. And that's where we didn't come up with Ford. It's been around for a long time. Some people call it Ford, some people call it Form. I like Ford. What do they stand for, Michaela? Family, occupation, recreation, and dreams.
Yep.
Right? And you don't have to do them in that order. In fact, I would recommend, based on what somebody says in the TMAY, that's the first one you start with. So you asked me, tell me about myself, and I told you, Michaela, that I'm the vice president of such and such company. I've been doing it for 20 years, and I'm in the running to be the CEO. You know what's the most important thing to me because I talked about it first.
Occupation. So it really wouldn't make any sense for me to be like, okay, and where do your kids go to school? It's like, let's dig into the area that he's already sharing a lot about. Not to say we won't shift over and eventually kids will might come up, but let's dig into where he's already comfortable talking and already sharing information. So we would jump straight to the O in Ford, occupation.
And guys, I wouldn't be afraid to take notes when you're talking to people. I always use a joke. I can use it, Michaela Camp, and I always say, I'm old. Look, I got to write stuff down or I forget things. I say that, and it gets them to laugh, a little self-deprecating humor, right? And it's true. So I do have to write stuff down. But I want to know, okay, you're vice president of the company. What do you do for that company? How'd you get started there? What's your degree in? Where do you see yourself going from there? What's a good stock tip that goes with your company, right? Anything I can ask them about what is the most important to them and really get to know them because they're going to love talking about it, right? What's people's favorite topic, Michaela, they like to talk about?
They like to talk about themselves.
They sure do, right? It's been a long time since either of you or I were ever in the dating pool. Mine's been a real long time. But the last thing you want to be doing is be the one doing all the talking, right? When you first meet someone, you're like, oh my gosh, I've been talking for 20 minutes straight. I got to ask the other person a question, right?
Yeah. And a quick little story just about taking notes. There was a listing. Somebody said, and there were other agents going on listing appointments to win this listing. The agent that won was taking notes, and the seller, they noticed that they were taking notes and they felt that that agent was so engaged. So don't be afraid. Don't think that you look silly. It's like you maybe feel like you're being interviewed a little bit, but you feel like somebody is really paying attention and taking what you're saying seriously, even if it's just a friendly conversation, even if you never talk about the house itself and only build that relationship with the person. I think that was such a great learning opportunity to know that the agent who won that listing won because they were taking notes and the seller saw them taking notes, and that interest, that relationship, and that connection that they were building, that's what won that listing.
It has less to do with what you can do for them and more to do with how you make them feel, which is crazy, right? My mentor taught me this. Human beings, we are not thinking creatures who feel. We are feeling creatures who think. We have emotion first, and then the reasoning comes in behind it, and that's how you end up with a broken heart, Michaela, right? Because you go with your heart first. Your head's like going, no, I wouldn't do that if I were you, and your heart says, we're doing it anyways, and that's the way.
Exactly. And like you said from the beginning, most of us are replaceable because we're not taking the time to build that relationship, and all of the other tasks that are involved in real estate, a lot of them can be done by anyone. Most people can put pen to paper or type out a contract now. Most people can do these tasks. So really, what's going to set yourself apart? And if you're not ready to be replaceable yet, Then let's dig into the relationship side of things and building that connection.
And the reality is, you want to get all 4 questions answered, but you really want to focus on what they want to talk about first. And you can feel when the conversation is starting to lag a little bit, then you can ask them the next question. When you ask a question, we'll probably do a video on this later, but we don't want to ask closed-end questions. In other words, we don't ask yes and no questions. We want to ask open-ended questions. So tell me about your family, right? They hadn't mentioned their family yet. We talked about, their occupation. So tell me about your family. Why is that, Michaela, good intel for a real estate agent?
Like I said before, so whenever I shared that I'm having a baby soon, in the back of your mind, you should be thinking, okay, well, I wonder, does their house have enough rooms to accommodate that new growing family? Are they going to want to be closer to schools? All of those things should be going on in the back of your mind whenever I tell you I'm having a baby soon. So asking just that simple question, tell me about your family. If you're an expecting mom, you're probably going to lead with that. Or if you already have 3 kids and we've got one going off to college, you think, okay, well, maybe they're looking to downsize soon. You've got to listen for those areas of transition.
I love it. And when you ask somebody, tell me about myself, and I said, you know what? I'm a helicopter skier. I love to heli-ski. What would that mean my favorite thing is then?
Honestly, I would have a lot of follow-up questions about that one. How did you get into that? Where do you do that? What is there? I would be like very engaged with that conversation.
It'd be recreation, right? What do I do for fun, right? Recreation. I know I've never asked anybody the question, by the way, hey, what do you do for recreation? I say, hey, what do you do for fun? You sounds like you work all the time and you got the family. And what do you do for fun? Sad answer a lot of times, just to be ready for this. A lot of people say, I really am too busy to do anything for fun.
I was going to say that question might be one of the hardest. And like you said, it's sad because people are like, oh, wait, what do I do for fun? I wake up, I go to work, I take care of the family, and then I go to sleep. So it might have them digging a little deeper too to really figure out, like, okay, maybe there's a little gap in an area that I could be focusing on in my personal life.
I always followed up with the question, well, if you did have extra time and the money to do it, what would you do for fun?
Right.
And
And
it's
to
good
your point,
intel, I think, for agents to have.
yep. And if they did say they're really into skiing, okay, so then maybe are we looking for a location change? Would they like to be closer to the mountains or hills? If they're really, I would talk about surfing. I'd probably want to be closer to the beach or to water. And so there's so much information you can gather from that one question if you're really listening. Don't just go through like a running checklist because that's scripted and that people can feel that. It really needs to be a genuine conversation where the follow-up questions make sense, not just like, tell me about your family and your occupation and listing them off. Nobody's going to enjoy that conversation.
And a lot of agents think they have connection. Oh, I connect with my clients, right? The big ego part in them again. I say, oh, really? So picture your best, everybody can do this right now. Picture your best agent or your best client that you have, right? Your number one client, everything that you have that would never leave you. And then ask yourself, what do they do for fun? What do they do for fun? If you can't answer that question, have you really connected with them and do you know everything about them? Now, of course, you're not going to be able to remember all this. This was the reason we're taking notes because you're going to use your CRM. We're actually going to do a video in the future on different CRMs and things like that coming up. But you put all of that in the CRM because nothing connects you better to your clients more than when you haven't talked to them in 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And you say, hey, I remember the fact that you loved heli-skiing. Did you see the article in Alpine magazine the other day where these 5 guys went and they were in an avalanche, right? And if they're really into heli-skiing, they did see that article. And the fact that you connected with them again on that, it takes that 5 years where you haven't talked, brings it right back together, and you're reconnected on that.
And again, we want them to be leading the conversation, but that's not to say that if there is something that you have in common, you don't share that common interest. So if somebody says they're really into skiing and you're also really into skiing, share that because something that I've learned and it's something that I've tried to improve on is sometimes we let them lead too much and share so little about themselves. You kind of just seem more like an empty shell and they want to know your personality. And we've talked about that in the past too. Your personality, you also matter. And so when they know you have that in common and they're like, oh, she skis too, that's awesome. You already feel that level of connection. You have a common ground. You can always circle back. If things get a little awkward or uncomfortable, you always have something to land back on. So don't be afraid. Don't just keep it to yourself. If you're talking to somebody and they're an expecting mom and you just say nothing, it's like you can share a little bit about yourself because they're working with you because of who you are, not just because you're asking a lot of questions about them.
I think it's a great point you bring up. One of my favorite things about FORD, Team and FORD, is the fact that it's not just a questionnaire that we're getting people to fill out. The best part of this whole thing that happens, or it has happened to me in the last 3 decades doing this, is some of my best clients have become some of my best friends. Like getting to know them and how cool they are as people. Even if they never did a real estate transaction for you, what if you ended up with a best friend out of the deal, out of going through that? Like, you're like, wow, you are really cool. This is something super awesome. And you end up being great friends out of it. I mean, that's like that's the worst part that could happen. What if they never did a real estate transaction with you, but you ended up with a great friend? That's awesome. And then the hardest question, I think, out of the FORD, Michaela, is the last one. It seems it's a sticking point for me for some reason.
Dreams. So dreams is difficult too, because that's such a lofty question. And a lot of times we are so busy. It's kind of right there with the recreation. Asking if money and time weren't an issue, where would you live? You can kind of relate that to some of the other, but making them dream and think long term. What's the long term plan? Are you staying local? Are you moving eventually? What does the dream home look like? At that point in the conversation, you've really got them thinking. I mean, they've got to be engaged because that's something they don't already typically have an answer for. Maybe if they've already like considered retirement and they do actually know, like, we're going to Florida, we're going to South Carolina, they might already know exactly where they're retiring. But still, you can dig deeper. Okay, then what does the dream home look like? And really get them engaged in that conversation.
The reality is a trained monkey can go into the MLS and set up a search and send it to people and then go and unlock houses and walk them through it. It doesn't require any special skill, but nothing, no AI, no CRM, no email drip campaign, no mass text messaging campaign, nothing like that can build a connection with people like you can. And you can build a connection to the point where they feel it would be a sin or a huge betrayal to even consider using someone else. And if you can create a big enough fan out of them, and we'll do a video in the future on super fans, building super fans, but they're going to tell everyone to use you because of how you made them feel. And so the dreams part, I ask it like this. I say, hey, what's future plans look like? Where are you going to be 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? And this question, in my opinion, is the biggest piece of intel you need as an agent. Well, little Johnny is going to start school in 3 years. And right now, we're buying the starter house and it's really in a neighborhood where we don't want to send him to school. I already know in the CRM that 2 years from now to have an appointment scheduled to meet with them and start talking about year 3 to get them in a school system, right? So it's great intel. I know where they're going to go and what they're going to do. I know if they say, yeah, we're retiring in 7 years, I know that in year 5, I need an appointment set up to talk to them about downsizing and possibly reloading and things like that, right? So that's another thing. A lot of agents miss out on money of people leaving their area, right? How many reloads do you have coming into South Carolina, Michaela, coming from Ohio, right? Like half of Ohio has moved to the Carolinas.
Yeah.
And so that's a piece of money that agents leave on the table all the time is your clients leaving, but they still love you if you've built the connection. You can absolutely refer them and collect money on the other end and help ease that transition into the other agent by saying, here's what's important to them. Here's FORD, bam, 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 bam. Here's how to deal with them so the handoff goes smooth. And they still love you and they keep referring people that are here.
And how special is it when you follow up? Hopefully you're interacting periodically throughout the year, but in 2 years, you're like, hey, I remember they're going to school. How important do they feel to you? They're like, oh my gosh, I forgot I even said that. How does he remember that this was part of the long-term goal? How does he remember that we wanted to retire in South Carolina? Like, we haven't talked about that in forever. Like, maybe, and they get the wheels spinning because real estate is a long-term relationship. You just shared with me today that you just had a listing appointment and you've done this will be transaction number 5 with these same clients. It is not just a one and done, and I before we jumped on, we shared, that conversation, that listing appointment went a little bit easier. You said it felt like you were sitting down with friends. It was just an enjoyable, but you've done 5 transactions with them. That's not just because they thought anybody else could do the job. You've built that relationship. They enjoy working with you. They trust you. I mean, that's special. You're building long-term clients.
We had just gotten back into town, and we had briefly set it up over text to get together. And they said, "Hey, we're looking forward to seeing you guys tonight." And we're like, "Oh my gosh, we're 15 minutes away, and we're supposed to be getting together in 12 minutes." But it was so cool because they were no longer clients; they were friends, right? And we showed up. We're in shorts, flip flops, our hair's disheveled because we've been traveling and things like that. And we just showed up and hung out and met their new doggy and stuff like that we hadn't met before. And it was great. And that's my wish for everybody here, because look, I mentioned this before, I'm going to say it again. No AI or CRM or anything like that can replace you if and only if you build meaningful connections. So I learned this the other day, and it's something that's super important, and that's this. Never in the history of mankind have human beings been more connected. And I'm talking through social media. We're more connected than ever, right? We see what people are having for breakfast. They're taking pictures of when they're out ordering appetizers and margaritas and stuff like that. We're more connected than we've ever been, but we're the loneliest we've ever been in human history. Because human beings are social creatures. We get together, we connect, and we build a connection. So we're connected, but there's no connection. And so the agent that's going to win is the one that builds the connection. And then we did a video, we'll put the link down below, called the sales funnel, the reverse sales funnel. If you want to know how much money you're going to make as an agent, you need to know how many meaningful conversations, also known as connections, TMAY and Ford, you're having per day. How many are you having per day? We can accurately predict, based on the law of large numbers, how much money you'll make in your area based on your commission rate and your closing percentage.
Yep. Because people, they don't remember what you said, they remember how you made them feel. And so really just a quick recap of the Ford, because we kind of jumped around on them, but you're focusing on family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. We'll put them in a little PDF for you. So if you need a guide and you need some just conversation starters, you don't really know how to ask an occupation related question or dream related question, we'll put some ideas in there, just a quick reference for you. And you've kind of alluded to it, but I think it would be really great if you don't know your numbers, jump into the reverse sales funnel. It's super easy if you know your goals, if you know your average sales price in your market and your average commission. That's the only thing you need to know. Plug in those 3 numbers. It's going to tell you how many conversations you need to be having. And then I would challenge you, go out, set a goal. If you know you need to have 5 conversations a week, do those 5 conversations this week and let us know how that goes.
Yeah, literally put the checklist in front of you. If you're somebody like, I can't remember this TMAY and Ford, write it down on the paper, and that's where you take your notes, and you transcribe those into your CRM. So that even if they're not doing a transaction today, in the future, when you do go to talk to them again, make a connection again, you refer back to those notes, and you bring up something you talked about. They'll be so impressed that you remembered it, right? I'm not remembering anything. I'm putting everything in the computer. And that's one thing, if I could go back 30 years and redo everything again, I would have taken better notes on people with the connections that we did build, because I thought I would remember them. You're not going to. That's the reality. So it's great stuff today. I'm glad we went through. Is anything we missed?
Nope. I think the biggest takeaway is connection is your superpower. You master it, you become the unforgettable, irreplaceable agent.
Yeah. And stop saying you're the number 1 in customer service. Every single agent says that. Oh my gosh, it's such an egotistical. I'm number 1 in customer service.
So subjective. I'm like, where did you get this from?
They just made it up.
Yep.
87% of all stats online are made up. Did you know that?
Sounds right. That doesn't.
I just made that one up too. That's what you know. Awesome. All right, good deal. I love it. We'll do some more. I'll see you soon. Time.